Welcome to the Wealthy Retailer Podcast for the week of March 18th already. Happy spring. I'm Dan Holman, your host. I've got my main man from Road 55 Marketing, Rob Lawlisher, here to help us along with some news stories this week. Rob?
Yeah, how's it going today?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Spring is in the air. It's sunny and bright and beautiful out.
Yeah, we'll be maybe tipping back a green beer or two a little later today.
We might do that. Yeah.
If the moon's aligned, awesome. Well, before we got to earn those beers, Dan. So let's talk about some of the headlines this week. Interesting story that I'm sure is apparent to many, but a good, looking forward as well, and talking about where Canadians have been spending the most money during the pandemic. Great little one about the local circulation of those local dollars, and does a really nice job breaking down of the impact of, when those dollars are spent with a local biz versus some of the bigger box stores, how that impacts the community. We love it. We've had a few of these over the last few weeks, and I love seeing these stories about a little startup, their pop-up story of, how they came to be. Port congestion, is an interesting topic that maybe is a little bigger than most of us think, but at the end of the day can affect us, and curious to hear your thoughts there. And of course, we've got a retailer question of the week, and this week we're talking about shrinkage, and I mean the bad kind, not the cold water variety, Dan. Like we're talking the hitting the pocketbook. So some good stories indeed. First story comes from globalnews.ca, and talking about, where Canadians have been spending their money during the pandemic. But more importantly, Dan, what your sense of is, looking ahead and what retailers might do.
Yeah, for sure, Rob. And Global News reported the other day, I don't remember which day it was, but they sent out this article with a good little video. We'll have a link to it in our newsletter. 94% of Canadians found being outdoors had helped them relieve their anxiety and stress that's brought on by the pandemic. And 86% agree spending time outdoors is important to their mental health during this period. And these numbers have and will continue to drive consumer spending in those relatable markets. And so here's some quick stats that I pulled out of the article, kind of where we're spending our dollars that would have normally been spent in travel, dining, or entertainment. Swimming pool sales up 51% from June to September 2020, year-over-year sales. Home improvement and warehouse materials saw an increase of 31% in that period. Home accessory and gift stores are up double digit. Bike stores are up 21%. Other outdoor activities, skiing, skating, barbecue, RV, boat, off-road, all having their best year in the last decade. And all indicators today, here we are, sort of mid-March, all indicators point to this summer being a copy of last June through September. And so, of course, the question is, well, what do our indie retailers do? And I am of the belief, and recognizing this with some of our existing clientele, retailers are now adding to their current inventory with items that complement or enhance the consumer's current buying habits. This is not the time for us to try to lead her down a new path. We've got to kind of ride this wave that's in front of us. And if you're an apparel store, start to mix in some things that foster the outdoor life, some novelty tees and hoodies that sort of speak to that being outdoors. Maybe it's adding some aromatherapy products in your store that allow her to sort of enhance the feeling inside her home. So, this, right or wrong, global's kind of the trends are pointing this way to be June through September to be similar to last year. And I can tell you, having just purchased a new RV.
I thought maybe you got a pool down. I knew where I was coming over this summer.
No, but having bought this RV, I spent half the time talking with these guys, with the GM over there, just about the industry and how sales have been. And they are absolutely off to their best start in their history. And I'll give a little shout out to Arcan, did a fabulous job. I was saying to a client of mine yesterday, to Bob Zeckel at Cloud9, it's the best sales experience I've ever had at that, price point, at a higher price point, better than my car experience. And you know how much I love the experience that I get from my friend Bruce Kirkland over at Lexus of Edmonton. This surpassed that. It was so good. But the whole, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked on this, but the whole point was that they're having their best year. They're coming off of their best year and off to the start of their best year in the existence.
I like the, you're talking about, regardless of what you sell, just embrace the activity, the approach that people are going to be taking this year. Whereas, a year ago, I think many of us were still in the, well, maybe this will last a few weeks, right? Like, but not really altering their plans, and just kind of whatever happened last year. But now it's okay. Let's talk about barbecue fashion. What can we do to embrace this activity and leverage it the best that we can?
And I think that as we see these continued adjustments to our current life, the people that have grown accustomed to spending time outdoors are now long to spend more time outdoors.
Right.
And certainly we see that in the ski industry this year, still going strong here in the middle of March, whether it's alpine or mountain here. I mean, it's been so good.
Yeah. Well, don't they say like 30 days to make a new habit? So you think,
say 28 days to form a new habit.
So the past year, how many new habits have been
468 days of habits.
But you mentioned briefly the line, Dan, about not taking them down a totally new path. Can you just expand on that for a moment?
So what I mean, let's not be Costco here. Let's not put Christmas trees out in August and think we're going to change consumer buying to buy your Christmas tree in August. Let's not try to introduce something the latest and greatest in fashion. I'm saying ride this wave that we're on. We've forced her to buy a new way. We haven't forced her, but he's been forced to spend their discretionary dollars in ways that support them as individuals. And in a lifestyle that 94% or 86%, pardon me, of this survey believe that outdoors is where it's at. I've got to be outside. It's helping me. It's good for my mental wellness, my health, my productivity. But it also helps me to alleviate some of that stress. And that's why we're seeing, take a walk through town in the evening. Everybody's out.
Yeah.
Especially when it's 15 degrees.
Yeah, we'll take it after that.
Yeah, so I don't want to see stores, trying to launch something new that we've got to go and amass an audience for. It's not about the early adoption. It's not big screen TVs here. This is about riding the wave that we're on. And I mean that in the truest sense of the pun. Let's ride this third wave exactly the way it is, cater to the things that enhance her current lifestyle. We'll go back to something else later, maybe a different something, but it'll, big screen TVs aren't gone forever, man.
I like, back to Bob and Cloud9, like you think of this is the evening patio pajama series, right? So not too far out, but definitely thinking of where these people are going to be.
Well, loungewear has been one of the better performers in the apparel world for sure. And in all stores, loungewear has taken over some market share.
Yeah, right on. Okay, Dan, on to the next story. I know we love this topic and keep pounding on the theme of just the importance of supporting small local businesses and on that first level of we think more their products and services first. God forbid if it wasn't there tomorrow, but there's such a bigger impact. Talk to us a bit about this story.
This article out of Retail Insider, said it before, say it again, favorite morning coffee news source, Retail Insider. In this article from Sean Terry, sort of goes on to talk about what we've heard many times before. Small businesses are the lifeblood of the Canadian economy, in fact, of the North American economy. And they are the backbone of the communities in which they operate. They're the very heart and soul of the neighborhoods that they serve. These are statements that have often been employed to describe the contribution of the Canadian entrepreneur and independent business towards the continued and overall strength of the Canadian marketplace. And Sean grabbed on to a former small business owner, Christina Ajid, and I believe Christina is or was the owner of Layla's in North Vancouver, which is a fashion-forward gift store, a couple of locations. And she goes on to talk about her belief as consequences of the pandemic continue to mount, its long-term impacts begin to rear, the critical role filled and performed by independent businesses toward the health of these Canadian communities that we're talking about and the financial viability of the country soon become regrettably obvious. And so now this article really allows us to prove what Christina believes to be true to in fact be true. Her belief, that we're seeing this declining Canadian economy, and more importantly, this declining community, has never been more accurate. Stats Canada, one of our least favorite stats reporters, but typically on point, Stats Canada says our economy posted its worst ever performance, registering a 5.4% decline in GDP for 2020. And that, for those statisticians out there, is the largest recorded decrease since they started tracking it in 1961. And so this article continues to impress upon the importance of supporting the independents in our communities. And as you sort of alluded to at the opening, 63 of every $100 spent in a local store stays in the local economy. It stays in your community, as opposed to $14 of every 100 spent at a multinational chain. And so, Rob, what do we as independent retailers do? And again, I'm going to say my belief is we need to band together and support each other, and the belief that we are stronger together than apart. Every retailer should belong to a retail coalition in their community, an action-driven alliance that fights to support and strengthen our retail economy. And there are lots of coalitions out there. The Chamber of Commerce, in fact, could be a coalition. Totally. The Downtown Business Association could be a coalition. The performance or mastermind groups that you should be a part of are coalitions. And us banding together and strengthening the independent business is how we will push our economy forward. It has nothing to do with multinational chains. And a story a little further down, we're going to talk about a multinational chain that's feeling some pinch.
Yeah, I think we brought it up. Oh, this is like many episodes ago. I think I used the term profit local instead of just shop local. And
it's profit local.
And thinking of that, who's the landlord, who owns the building, who the suppliers are, who the staff are, and just all the way down the line. And I love that, banding together, and Chamber is a great example where, I've served on Chamber boards, and so my nickel of advice would be that if you're trying to yell from the rooftop just on your own, it can come across as very self-serving.
Right.
But on the other side too, you don't need the entire membership to, is this the entire membership's cause? There's opportunity for a local retail committee, let's just as one example, to band together, but under the guidance and structure of a chamber. Because I've seen the versions too where 3 or 4 in the corner decide to band together, and quickly it becomes super self-serving, literally to that one corner. But
Christina does a pretty good job in this article of talking about, the measure of independent business is always revenue revenue is always the measure. And in fact, it never talks about profitability. It never talks about having to generate profit to pay the workers, to pay the landlord, to pay the electricity bill. It never talks about profitability. It talks about revenue and revenue decline, not profit increase. It's so revenue driven that we do have to think about who owns the building and how am I impacting that? Who does the merchandising in this store? Who owns this store? Where do her kids go to school? What do her kids do? All of these things that support that dollar we spend in a local business. And it's not, we're coming at this, Rob, from this place of being retail advocates, but it really is all independent businesses. When I go to get my windshield fixed, I'm going to go see a local guy. I'm going to go talk to that guy. I mean, which should lead every bit of our spending. Can I buy it from someone closer to me that has greater economic impact in my community than the goddamn click and pick at Amazon?
If you look at the restaurant industry for a moment, I'd say that they've done a nice job of building this narrative of, call it farm to table, like the 10 mile, 100, but they're communicating that. And I haven't, at least thus far, I haven't seen a ton of that in what I'd call the retail of that farm to that local profit approach to it. And with that just comes, there's opportunity to tell more of that story in your community about the full impact. Yeah, there is for sure.
And depending on the sector of retail that you're in, you will have more farm to store opportunity, craft to store opportunity, apparel manufacturer to store opportunity, versus the port congested 80% of all apparel comes on a boat, strategy that we'll talk about a little later.
Okay, but until we get there, just a reminder, folks, this podcast is brought to you by Canadian Retail Solutions. They've been empowering retailers across North America for 30 years with the latest point of sale technology. Folks, it's best in class support, merchandise intelligence, open to buy planning, so much more. They've got the retail solution to help you and your business get to that next level of success. If you haven't yet, we're going to tell you at least 3-4 times more, but visit retailbycrs.com. Learn more. Remember, Canadian Retail Solutions, they're here to help you, the independent retailer, better. Okay, talking about that independent retailer, here's this next story talking about this lady, Amanda Benedict, found herself out of work in turmoil the past year. How often have we talked about this, Dan? And just, taking some of her personal, design inspiration, packaging it up and heading out into the retail world. What jumped out at you in this story?
Well, first off, it's from North Carolina, so I don't know how you picked on that one for me, but yeah, another North Carolina story really comes out of that triad that's around Winston-Salem and Charlotte and so on. But Amanda Benedict, owner, founder, creator at Blue Jean Boutique. And again, you're right, this story has some strong similarities to those that we've talked about in the last 6 or more months. This is a woman, I believe single mom, out of work in this world of turmoil last year, coming off of a job where she was designing t-shirts for someone else, decided to launch her own line and selling self-designed shirts, stickers, jewelry that all revolve around fashionable comfort, each spreading a message of female empowerment or positivity, was born. And she went through the Q3, Q4 of last year, living in that pop-up retail world. And over time, over that sort of 4 or 5 month period, she began to carry products from other female-owned small businesses and showing support for a few local female entrepreneurs. This story has more good in it than just that. This is a business, Rob, a woman that has decided, this entrepreneur that has decided that she's going to maintain a socially conscious mantra, working with organizations like Baitavi. Baitavi is an organization out of Cambodia that employs seamstresses, paying them a fair wage in a country stricken with poverty.
Yeah.
And so she works with another Christian organization to help craft some jewelry. So she's really gone out and found cause to support that sort of feeds into her empowerment story. But what we can take out of this, there's a few things that I think we can take out in our current retail lives and apply in our current retail lives. Okay. Number one, launching your own line shouldn't be a dream. Shouldn't be just a dream, Rob. Launching your own line should and can be a very real action, as evidenced by not just Amanda, but let's go back and talk about the 5 other entrepreneurial spirits that we've spoken about in the last 5 or 6 weeks on the podcast, every one of them with their own flair. Remember Psycho Bunny? Remember LaFleur? I mean, all of these stories are, let's launch our own line. Let's do something ourselves. So my big takeaway for us independent retailers today is if you're sitting there dreaming about launching your own line, take some inspiration from this story and let's get started. Number 2, empowering and supporting others is critical to our success. And most importantly, the third thing I took from this, Rob, we need to be brave.
Yep.
And take some risk. If you want big rewards, you got to take big risks. And entrepreneurialism at its core is about taking a risk. And this is a great example, Amanda. Yeah, great job launching this boutique off of, the work done by her fingertips kind of thing.
Yep. So if you had to hop on a quick elevator ride with Amanda, Dan, what you know now, what little advice would you give to her on what her next steps might be? Putting you on the spot for
you are. I think the whole, as I read through the story, it really was about her continuing in pop-up markets, setting up in a shop, in other stores. The leap of faith here, Rob, is your own boutique.
Yeah.
Your own omni-channel presentation. And if we go and look at Blue Jean Boutique, we're going to see that's her destination.
Right on. Well, we wish
got to take that risk to get in front of more audience.
Yeah. And I love your point about, on the brand side, we've talked about that before, and kind of leads us a little bit into the next story too, about the reliance on so many others versus some of, creating what is truly yours at the end of the day, your own products, so that you maybe don't get caught quite as much as the problems from this next story here coming from retaildive.com, where it talks about some of the issues out of port congestion, and like I said, it's a big topic, but definitely ripples its way down all the way to the smallest retailer. What were your thoughts here, Dan?
Yeah, it totally does. There is a trickle down effect, and this story really highlighted Foot Locker's challenge in obtaining merchandise on time from overseas suppliers. The ports, not just LA and Long Beach, probably the busiest ports on the continent, but all ports are faced with this significant congestion, creating several weeks, 2, 3, 4 week delays in just landing goods on dry land to get them to us. We, an independent retailer, are feeling those exact same effects. While I can empathize with Foot Locker, don't really give a shit. I'm more focused on, what's the trickle down to the independent that's buying from from distributors that are bringing product into these ports. And what's happening to us in independent retail, Rob, we're being forced to land inventory well into our selling season, which means we're probably having to mark down goods sooner to end our seasons with the right amount of inventory, right? This is creating a decline in overall sales performance, and reports showing year-over-year revenues down for Q4 in 2020. And the number varies between 3 and 30% down in Q4 2020, and the numbers will be the same for Q1 in 2021. And it is all about inventory, the right inventory in the right category at the right time. I can tell you about stories about outdoor and bike that got their summer inventory, their spring summer inventory in August.
Wow!
Right? At the end of their season. Yeah. It's landing the minute that fall goods are starting to land. And now I've got to scramble to sell products that I'm late in the season. There is some misery loves company. We're all kind of in that same maybe boat. But as we've talked about on the podcast before, those that are planning their purchases, those that are going out there and they know what their demand will be, they're using some intelligence to understand where their demand is. They then know where they need to buy, and we take extra effort to ensure we have that inventory rather than relying on the boat to dock.
Is there, or are there options for retailers, Dan, that like, is it their burden to carry totally? Or, thinking of some of the bigger products, is it, well, buy that bike today, even though I might not be able to put it into your hands until August, or do retails carry that risk all the way till that final day of sale?
There's not a lot of special order opportunity in today's world. We're seeing it more in luxury purchases.
Right.
If I'm buying a $7,000 road bike, I'm perhaps prepared to place an order and wait for it to come in. If I'm buying a hot tub, I'm prepared to wait for it to come in. But in our traditional retail world, that's not the case. Yeah, and I believe, Rob, that this problem is going to subside over the next 3 or 4 months as our countries, plural, get back to open for business. Not this bullshit-ridden, restrictive environment that we're in today, but actually open for business. We will recover fairly quickly, although the road will be arduous. I won't sort of deny that. The strong and adaptable risk takers, like we talked about a minute ago, will recover and flourish.
Right on.
Again, you got to ride the wave, man. You got to ride the wave that we're in and do your best to find products that fit her need, not use the excuse, it's stuck in port. I can't get it. My vendors don't have inventory. There's lots of inventory available if you go looking.
Yeah. Well, and the excuses are plenty. If you want them, they're there. Right. And
easiest thing to do is deflect blame.
You won't have to look very far.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan, loving this part of the podcast here, the questions from retailers, lots of great ones. And more importantly, like they share the question that, we know it's their problem, but we know everyone is just, I got the same thing. What's your thoughts here?
Yeah, this one came from Denise here in Edmonton. Sorry. Yeah, Denise here in Edmonton. Hi, Dan. I was wondering if you could share some information on shrinkage. My accountant just completed our year-end financials, and our shrinkage is 3.5% for 2020. When I Googled when I Googled retail shrinkage, it seems much lower than mine. What am I doing wrong? Denise, thank you for the question. I've already chatted with Denise. We actually had a call, talked about shrinkage, talked about some strategies to help. Shrinkage numbers are going to typically be all over the place. And retail shrinkage in 2020, I believe, was reported at about 1.6%. The number generally in retail runs about 1% of sales. We certainly see that numbers can get up as high as 3 to 5% in shrinkage, depending on the type of store you are. And so the overall number that she found on Google maybe told her a different story. Well, that takes into account stores that have zero shrinkage. And there are stores out there that have near zero shrinkage. I shouldn't say zero. Nobody has zero, but near zero. So I really said to Denise, and I say to everyone, like any number, we need to drill down to identify and solve issues, the real issues. We should recognize what percentage of our shrinkage is an internal problem and what percentage is an external problem. Statistics report approximately 1/3 of your shrinkage comes from an internal problem, a staff problem.
Yep.
Ouch. Another third of the problem, 33% of shrinkage, Rob, you're going to believe this one, is on the owner.
Yeah,
it's
I can believe that.
That's taking product out of their stores, and that creates a shrinkage. Yep. It is. I'm an offender of that myself.
Yep.
And then a third is that external customer, the customer is taking. So I came up with 3 things you can do to help improve your store to mitigate some shrinkage. You're not going to eliminate it, but you might help to reduce it. So the number one thing that every security specialist, retail security specialist, loss prevention specialist is going to say, you got to cycle count inventory on a regular basis. You have to demonstrate to yourself and your team that you're paying attention to your inventory. Create a routine to help identify the missing items. Where did it go? When did it go? Where do I post that? How do I share that message? I was taught a long time ago, 30% of your staff will never steal from you. 30% will only do it if they believe they won't get caught. And 30% are robbing you blind because they know you're not paying attention. Okay, if you've got 10 employees, you need to believe that 3 of them are robbing you blind because you're not paying attention. We can eliminate the 6 out of 10 that don't and wouldn't unless they thought they wouldn't get caught by simply creating cycle counts, creating mechanisms in your store that demonstrate inventory is a value. So that's number 1. Number 2, never, ever allow inventory in or out of your store without it being on an invoice, an order, a return, or a transfer. This includes ownership. I should never take anything out of my store unless it's on a document, unless it's entered into the POS system.
Yep.
When staff see us taking without proper paperwork, it sets a precedent and sends the wrong message. When we don't effectively track our inventory, it sends a message that we don't care, right? We're complacent. Opens the opportunity up.
Pretty slippery slope at that point.
It's a slippery slope.
Yep.
Number 3 is really about the customer. Please stop leaving your customers and your staff in some cases unattended or ignored in your store. When staff are idle and unengaged with your customer, opportunity for helping themselves increases. Rely on your selling system to keep staff engaged and customers engaged in your store. Rely on your selling system. I can't tell you the number of stores I walk into and could easily walk out with things unnoticed because staff are not doing what they should be. Right? They're consumed with something else.
Yeah. Holding up a phone.
Right.
Is right now. Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you this. Okay. I'm going to share a bad story of my own. This is a true story of a time when I was in the furniture business, hired a young man, a person that seemed to be unhireable, didn't have a job, couldn't get a job. We hired him, and he was a wonderful, wonderful employee. And he moved his way through the ranks from being a helper on the delivery truck to driving the delivery truck to scheduling other delivery trucks, to being in the warehouse. And we watched this young man grow from a very young age, sort of 17, 18, to get married, have a couple of kids, buy his first home, all while in our employ. And when he bought his home, he had a Sunday afternoon housewarming barbecue and invited Marlene and I over. I went, which I rarely did, but I went to this. This young man was really close to us. We really sort of we're embracing him. But this is where the story turns sideways and demonstrates this lack of attention that I was paying. As we toured through his home, I identified virtually every single piece of furniture as coming from our stores.
Nope.
Didn't say anything, had my burger, had my beer, left, went home. He worked Tuesday to Saturday. So Monday, when I went into the office, I immediately started looking for invoices, for sales, through warehouse sales and liquidation sales and whatever I could find. Not a single piece of paperwork. And so when he came in Tuesday, I had to ask him, where did it come from? It was all customer returns or defective product that was identified in the warehouse. It was undocumented, and he helped himself to it and filled his new home.
Oh, that just hurts on so many levels.
I mean, that's shrinkage. That's an internal shrinkage. And it came from a couple of things that I identified that we weren't doing. We weren't properly tracking inventory into the warehouse. We certainly did a pretty good job tracking inventory out. Not good enough, because at some point, he delivered some furniture to his home, whether in the back of a pickup truck or one of my delivery trucks. I couldn't tell you, but it happened, right? And so this story, this question from Denise really took me back to that place where I wasn't paying close enough attention. I didn't have that, those practices in place, Rob. And so listen, the three things I shared about cycle counting, documenting all your inventory and having a strong selling system aren't going to stop shrinkage, but it might help. There's other things that we can do, other technologies we can use if you're really feeling a high level or seeing a high level of shrinkage, like RFID tags, security tags and posts, and of course, cameras that help to deter the five-finger discount takers. Thieves are really smart. And I listened to someone this week or last week, in a Zoom meeting talk about why police are so good, why the detectives are so good today. It's because the criminals are better, right? So, we want to do things that deter shrinkage in your store. Won't stop it, but let's at least deter it. And I did also let Denise know that she's not doing anything wrong. 3.5% is probably pretty standard. Why it seemed to be highlighted for her this year, is just a number that we hadn't paid attention to before.
Geez. Well, that was great. Thanks for sharing. That's a tough story to hear. And definitely you can see that he fell into that category of just at one point felt no one was paying attention. No one was looking, and what harm could it do?
And Rob, when questioned, he went on to say, I didn't think it mattered. We weren't going to sell them. Every great excuse or what he believed was a reason that he could come up with that just were unjustifiable. And I can tell you stories of our own retail clients sharing with me, a girl walking out of the store wearing a mask that she didn't buy. Something as little as a mask that she took off a shelf, put it on, and walked out of the store with. And that's a staff member that does that. Right. And if that staff member took that, what else have they taken? I can tell you not very long ago, found one of my employees leaving with a duffel bag full of toilet paper. Needed it. He should have asked, and he'd have got it.
There's a shortage, man.
Yeah, I never even thought about that sort of funny part. But this poor guy, Henry was his name, lived alone, and he, he was taking cleaning supplies and bathroom supplies, and because he needed them.
Yeah.
And he felt like it was okay. And if he'd have asked, he'd have probably gotten them the exact same way. Perhaps he wouldn't have had to take them. He would have, we would have taken him to a store and bought that stuff with him. But, nonetheless, it's happening. Pay attention.
I like the messaging of, just a bit of that ounce of prevention versus the pound of cure, and just having these little things in place that the weight it can carry, just that they know that there's a system there. There's something that that'll take care in all likelihood 30% of your problem just by that little bit of they know we're doing something.
We're doing something, and we're counting. I mean, I can tell you, Rob, that there has been so many conversations with retailers that have sold something online that they don't have.
Yeah.
And they can't explain why they don't have it. I can tell you that it's happened with the T&B crew. Hey, we sold ... and didn't have ... Well, where is it? Didn't you do your cycle counts? Yeah, we just counted last week. Where is it? Well, no, that's shrinkage.
Right.
It's the only thing it can be chalked up to. So I had to check my own little duffel bag just to make sure it wasn't me punking underwear out the back door.
30% there. Right on. Okay, Dan. Burning questions out there. How do the folks get them to you?
Absolutely. Retailers, please send your questions to dan@thewealthyretailer.com. I will respond. Maybe we'll talk about it here on the podcast. We've got 8 or 10 questions that we're going to answer over the course of however long we're going to do the retailer question thing. Please send them, dan@thewealthyretailer.com, and definitely subscribe to the weekly newsletter. Every story we talk about is in there, plus a few Rob will highlight that we didn't speak about. And of course, a copy of this podcast, which you can find on your favorite podcast platform.
Right on. Speaking of those extra stories that Dan mentioned, this one just made me laugh. Heinz is, hey Dan, you want some hanch on that, or some tarchup, some wassail bioli? They took here's Heinz having some fun with old customer content where they actually made these products. So a fun little story on there. We'll have to link. Lots of Starbucks closures, but when one door closes, another door opens, and a story about a local business stepping in to fill the real estate voids and what those opportunities are. Got another story about the 10 most innovative logistics companies of 21. I'm sure might be of some interest. And a story about Venn being bought by a Canadian company Lightspeed and the details on that. So yeah, all kinds of good stuff in the newsletter this week. As Dan said, head to retailbycrs.com, sign up. If you signed up, well, hey, you need to refer a friend. They'll be sure to call you a friend next week after you've done this good deed for them.
Right on. Yeah, good work. Thank you very much for today.
Have a great day, everyone.
Happy retailing.